the question is, where and how did the Russians get into this? And I think it's a very important question. So I assume that a lot of the people here may have, and if you haven't, I hope you will, read the declassified report by the intelligence community that came out in early January.
This is 17 agencies. 17
agencies, all in agreement, which I know from my experience as a senator and secretary of state is hard to get. They concluded with high confidence that the Russians ran an extensive information war campaign against my campaign to influence voters in the election. They did it through paid advertising, we think. They did it through false news sites. They did it through these 1,000 agents. They did it through machine learning, which kept spewing out this stuff over and over again, the algorithms that they developed. Now, so that was the conclusion. And I think it's fair to ask, how did that actually influence the campaign? And how did they know what messages to deliver?
Who told?
Who told them?
Yeah.
Who were they coordinating with or colluding with? Because the Russians historically, in the last couple of decades, and then increasingly, are launching cyber attacks, and they are stealing vast amounts of information. And a lot of the information they've stolen, they've used for internal purposes, to affect markets, to affect the intelligence services, et cetera. So this was different because they went public and they were conveying this weaponized information and the content of it. And they were running, there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites. And, I've seen them now, and you sit there and it looks like a, sort of low-level CNN operation. And
or a fake newspaper, like the Denver Guardian.
Like a fake newspaper. And so the Russians, in my opinion, and based on the intel and counter-intel people I've talked to, could not have known how best to weaponize that information unless they had been guided. And here's
guided by Americans.
Guided by Americans and guided by people who had, polling and data information.
Is that?
Now, let me just finish because this is the second and third step. So we know that they did that. We understand it. Best example. So within 1 hour of the Access Hollywood tapes being leaked, within 1 hour, the Russians, let's say WikiLeaks, same thing, dumped the John Podesta emails. Now, if you've ever read the John Podesta emails, they are anodyne to boredom. But they...
Yeah, we had him here once.
Yeah, but they were... forgive him for what he said about you, yeah. So they were run-of-the-mill emails, especially run-of-the-mill for a campaign. Should we do this? What should she say? I don't, the stuff that is so common, basic. Within 1 hour, they dumped them, and then they began to weaponize them. And they began to have some of their allies within the internet world, like Infowars, take out pieces and begin to say the most outrageous, outlandish, absurd lies you can imagine. And so they had to be ready for that, and they had to have a plan for that, and they had to be given the go-ahead. Okay, this could be the end of the Trump campaign. Dump it now, and then let's do everything we can to weaponize it. And we know it hurt us because, as I explain in my book, the Comey letter, which was, now we know, partly based on a false memo from the Russians.
Right.
It was a classic piece of Russian disinformation, compromat, they call it. So for whatever reason, and I speculate, but I can't look inside the guy's mind, he dumps that on me on October 28th, and I immediately start falling. But what was really interesting, since the mainstream media covered that, as I say, like Pearl Harbor, front pages everywhere, huge type, et cetera. And all of the Trump people go around screaming, lock her up, and all of that. At the same time, the biggest Google searches were not for Comey, because that information was just lying out there. It was for WikiLeaks. And so voters who are being targeted with all of this false information are genuinely trying to make up their minds. What does it mean?
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.